G'day everyone, how you doing? It's Lawrence, back with another video. So, in this video we're going to be talking about what it was like living in New Zealand from March of 2019 to April of 2021 under the dictatorship of one Jacinda Ardern. Now, just so you know, I am originally a New Zealander. I was born and raised in Blenheim, New Zealand, and I first left New Zealand in 1989 for bigger, brighter, better skies and all that sort of stuff. I've lived in the United States the majority of my adult life, and in 2019 I've moved back down to New Zealand to take up a position in a company in Auckland, New Zealand. Now, what I want to first state, because there's going to be New Zealanders watching this video, is I honestly didn't realize how Americanized I had actually become. I thought I was still the same guy that I was when I grew up in New Zealand, and that was the furthest from the truth. I didn't realize how much my mindset had changed, both socially and politically. And I learned very, very quickly within the first few months of being in New Zealand that I was no longer a New Zealander, I was actually an American. And I also learnt the reasons why I left New Zealand in the first place, and it's nothing against the citizenry or anything like that. It's the fact that it's a small island nation at the bottom of the world. You've got no next door neighbours outside of a bunch of yahoos to the west of you, and they're about 3,000 miles away. So New Zealand is an incredibly protected little part of the world, and so we grow up very, very naive. We grow up very ignorant and unaware of the actual, of the real workings of the world. And I experienced that myself when I first moved to the US in the late 80s. And more so after 95. You know, the United States has made me who I am. The United States schooled me. The United States really, really taught me a lot about the world and how the world works and a lot of other stuff. And this was experience that I know that I would never have been able to got in New Zealand. So with that being said, I'm going to just do a basic timeline of what it was like down there, because I flew into New Zealand just a couple of days after the terror shooting in Christchurch, and I was horrified by the political grandstanding on behalf of the New Zealand Prime Minister. I'd never seen anything like it, not even here in the United States. I've never seen political grandstanding like it in my entire life, and how Jacinda Ardern was using so quickly the deaths of these innocent people to bring about political change in the country was disgusting, to be quite honest with you. But she was playing against your sensibilities. She was playing against New Zealanders' empathy, sensibility, and honestly your naivety to these things. And very quickly, instead of taking responsibility at the government side of things in regards to how this individual got his hands on everything, she turned her sights on law-abiding New Zealand citizens and made them the pariahs of New Zealand. It was all these people that owned AR-15s and AK-47s and automatic, semi-automatic shotguns and everything like that that were the scourge of the scourge of the scourge. Now, that being said, to the viewer, if you understood how difficult it was to get your hands on that stuff down there, you'd be like, how did this dude get what he got in 2 years? The reality of the situation is the tests, the licenses, the background checks, the interviews of people that you know, all this different stuff that you have to go through to even be able to get a gun license, let alone get the licensing to own semi-automatic firearms, was horrendous. It was the strictest laws on the face of the earth. Before the shooting, Jacinda Ardern literally took zero responsibility government-wise and turned on the New Zealand citizenry. And she has done that throughout her prime ministership, or should I call it a dictatorship. And it was a dictatorship. When you place a gag order over all your MPs over a certain virus and what was happening, that's a dictatorship. Plain and simple. End of story. So the reality was, yeah, the massacre was horrific. It was a sad situation. It was genuinely. Even I admit that, and I'm a gun-owning American. The reality of the situation is she didn't stop there with changing the laws. They had the buyback. People handed in their firearms and everything. But the gangs and the gang members, out of the hundreds of thousands of semi-automatic rifles that are owned in New Zealand, only about 80,000 got handed in. Where are the extra 140, 160,000 firearms? Oh, yeah, that's right. The gangs still have them all. Yeah, that's okay. Cool. Cool story, bro. So then she goes on the hate America bandwagon. She literally had the gall to come to the United States because she was the golden-haired girl of the left and went on the hate America bandwagon. The hate America First and Second Amendments, stuff like that, openly talking about this stuff, like how she just doesn't understand how, why Americans have these things and all this sort of stuff. I mean, sincerely, the gall, the level of narcissism that you have to have as a leader of a country to fly to another country and tell them how effed up they are, that's a serious amount of narcissism. Like, you're talking about sociopathic narcissism, to be quite honest with you. Then, just as Christchurch is starting to lick its wounds, the Prime Minister brings about this whole Christchurch cool thing, where she goes again on a global tour trying to get countries to implement these hate speech laws called the Christchurch Call, where she had behind closed door meetings with executives and CEOs of major social media platforms in New Zealand, trying to coerce them into bringing about these controls over social media. And she succeeded in some respects. She certainly succeeded in New Zealand, 100%. I've experienced it myself. Because my laptop has a New Zealand IP address, I still fall under the actual laws, the speech laws of New Zealand for YouTube. I've had videos pulled down, literally had community strikes placed against me for stuff that other people say in the United States, but the moment I say it on my channel gets pulled down. I get a video dropped. I get a strike. So it's very, very real. There's stuff that you can search on Google in New Zealand and you won't get any hits. Whereas we search for it here in the United States, we'll get page after page after page. Proof and point, type into Google, Ross Ardern, Panama Papers. I'll guarantee you'll practically get nothing back in any way, shape or form. Whereas over here in the US, we get page after page after page after page. But just once everything was starting to settle down with that stuff, there's this virus shows up. Now, when everybody starts freaking out, I'm online actually trying to figure out what this is all about. And sure as heck, I find out that it's been around before, 2002, 3 and 4, and all the information was on Google. You could get all the information about this virus, the patents on it, who was doing who with it, what the NIH was doing with it, the certain funding at universities, all sorts of stuff, everything. I don't know about now on Google down in New Zealand, but I can tell you what, December of 2019, you could get everything on that virus. But here's the thing. We were thrown into a full-blown lockdown at the end of March, beginning of April of 2020. And this is where I turned dog on the New Zealand government. This is where I started to get really, really, really pissed off. And I mean really pissed off. You see, my father had had a massive stroke August of 2019. His whole left side of his body was dying. So he was in a nursing home. Now that nursing home was a 2-minute walk from my mother's and my father's house to his room. If you went to 47 Lakings Road, where my mother used to live, and walked down the driveway, turn left and walk down Lakings Road, and then turn right after a couple of houses and go across the street, you'd see the entrance of the nursing home. That's where my father was. Well, for 2 weeks leading up to the major lockdown, my mother wasn't able to see her husband of 58 years. Towards the end of the first week of the major lockdown, my father passed away. For 3 weeks, my mother was not able to be beside, talk, or see her husband of 58 years. The only two people that these people had known were each other. And these guidelines, these protocols, where the elderly weren't able to be around their loved ones, that came from the government. That came from Jacinda Ardern and Bloomfield, all these a-holes. Seriously, I've got zero sympathy for any of these people. Zero sympathy. And the reality is, what the elderly went through during that period of time was absolutely appalling. But here's the nail in the coffin. My mother was talking to my father as he was dying. He was a 2-minute walk from their house. The pain that my mother and father went through in his dying minutes was insufferable. The most cruel thing that you could ever possibly do to an elderly couple is exactly what the New Zealand government did to my parents. And as far as I'm concerned, you're a bunch, all of you are a bunch of dirtbags for doing that to New Zealand citizens. Not just my parents, but all of New Zealand citizens. I personally on Facebook said that shutting the entire country down would be the single biggest mistake you could ever possibly do. I'm being vindicated now, 100%, which is sad. I hate the fact that I was right about this stuff. I was trying to educate New Zealanders. I was trying to help people in Auckland, trying to educate them. Nobody would listen. Nobody. In actual fact, I was hated on. I was abused. I was chastised on social media, on Facebook, down there. Even after my father passed away, people in my hometown of Blenheim, they couldn't care less. I still got verbally abused online. Well, we feel bad for your father, but your belief system, how you're thinking is completely screwed up. Well, those same people, a year later, are like, well, what the government's doing is absolutely ridiculous. I can't believe, hey, I tried telling you idiots. Nobody. It was unreal being around this insanity, because that's exactly what happened in New Zealand during this period of time, was nothing short of insanity. I was fortunate enough, I was able to keep on working, and I did. I kept on working. I worked through the whole lockdown deal. I found a little supermarket that I could go to. It was hilarious. Around the corner at the Botany Downs shopping centre, there's a Pack and Save. Inside the shopping centre is a New World. Pack and Save had mile-long lines. You go to New World, you could walk straight into the supermarket. I never wore a mask. Nobody forced me to wear a mask. But the moment we were coming out of the lockdowns, the first thing that we had to do was we had to download a trace-app. Again, I never downloaded the trace-app because I knew what it was about. It had nothing to do with stopping the spread. But people were downloading it, scanning their QR codes at every building that they went to. You literally had to download this tracer app. And at every business, shopping centre, store, supermarket, company, whatever, you had to scan your QR code, QR code. So it was all about stopping the spread. And I told people, it's like, they've already got access to your information. You're just letting them have carte blanche to what you're doing now. It was a back door into everything that you do on your cell phone. And it was all for artificial intelligence. Tracking. Yeah, nobody believed me. Now New Zealanders are like, oh shit, this ain't cool. This is BS. Oh my God. Unreal. So we get into the end of 2020, into the beginning of 2021, and there's the talk about the jab. And I was like, at that point, I'm like, I'm out. I am not putting, because like I said, at the end of 2019, there was all the information that you could ever possibly get your hands on. There was already jabs available for it, but they were all experimental. There was no way in God's green earth that I was going to put an experimental jab that had been tested on people in which country? There's a country in the world right now that is being bombed off the face of the earth. What's that country called? Ukraine? Yeah, they've been running tests in regards to this stuff in that country from 2014, people. Yeah. Yeah, seriously. Yep. But would any of you believe that if I told you that back then? Nope. I'm pretty sure not too many of you would believe me now. But yeah, that's what was happening in the Ukraine. So anyway, and that's part of the reason why the country's being blown off the face of the earth, to clean up that stuff. Get rid of the evidence. Yeah. But that's another whole story. So I was out. I told people they're going to lock this joint down, and I am not going to be here for the next round of buffoonery. I'm out. And I did whatever I had to do to get the hell out of that country. That was it in a nutshell. And I did. I did whatever I had to do to get out of there. And I'm grateful that I was able to get back to the United States. People ask me, straight up, why are you leaving? I'm like, have you looked at what's going on? Well, yeah, it's kind of bad, isn't it? I'm like, oh my God, kind of bad. It's horrific what's happening down here. Military checkpoints on the highways in and out of Auckland, the main roads in and out of Auckland, when Auckland was in a level 4 lockdown and the rest of the country was saying level 2. Your inability to travel, to fly, to move. Even for me to leave New Zealand, I had to have a negative virus test. And the rigmarole that I had to go through 4 levels of security at Auckland International Airport to get out of the country. I was told that I had to have my negative virus test to get back into the United States. I had an argument with the travel agent about it. I'm like, they can't force this stuff on you in the United States. Well, sir, those are what we've been told. These are the rules. These are blah, 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 blah. So finally, I'm going to leave the country. I need to get this. So I went out and I got it. I went through 4 levels of security at Auckland International Airport, leaving the country on the 15th of April. When I got to the United States, guess what? 0, nothing, nada, zip, nothing. Even the people in customs, the customs personnel, didn't even have masks on. When they stamped my passport, welcome back to the United States, Mr. Bryant, great to see you back. I'm like, don't you need my paperwork? I was told I had to have this negative virus test. Sir, that's unconstitutional. We can't ask you for anything like that. You're free to go. That's why I moved back to the United States. See, all you Kiwis think the United States is, especially the liberal Kiwis, you think it's a nut house. No. The liberties that we have in this country are unbelievable. The feeling of relief, the feeling of the giant gorilla of anxiety that lifted off my shoulders was unbelievable. And my gratitude and thanks to being back in the United States and to the people that got me back to the United States is overwhelming to this day. I'm extremely thankful and extremely grateful. Seriously, I really, truly am. And I've got friends right here, right now, from my hometown of Blenheim, New Zealand, who are living in Texas. And they cannot get over it. They're like, oh my God, dude, this place is heaven. Like, yeah, you can do anything in this country. It's the feeling of being able to move and the expanse that you can move on with the minimal amount of interference. Whereas in New Zealand, during these lockdowns, during this dictatorship under Jacinda Ardern, what was going on was endless. I mean, I'll give you a good example. During the lockdowns, the police phone lines in Auckland, New Zealand crashed because the police were getting so many phone calls from the citizenry that the system failed. New Zealanders were turning on New Zealanders en masse. And the same thing happened with the vaccine. New Zealanders turned on New Zealanders. The unjabbed are the pariahs of the country. The government turned on the farmers. The government has turned on business. The government has turned on everything. But yet, the dictator-in-chief, Cindy, oh, we're going to rebuild New Zealand equally. Well, what's equal about the record numbers of homelessness right now? What's equal about the record numbers of failing businesses right now? What is equal about a 10 to 15% spike now in deaths in the country? What is equal about record numbers of people falling into poverty in the country? That's not equal. This one particular individual who placed gag orders on all the MPs, who placed a gag order on the Royal Commission report in regards to the Christchurch massacre for 30 years. The laws that they've changed, everything that this person and her government have done is single-handedly on the verge of destroying what used to be one of the most beautiful countries on the face of the earth. I hope from the depths of my heart and soul that you start to wake up down there. I know there's a good percentage of people that are waking up now. However, it's got to be more. You need reform down there. You need serious, serious, serious change. And it's got to start at the political level. You've got to clean house. You've got to get rid of the MPs that you've got in power now, and you need to get rid of the mixed member multi-proportional voting system. It is completely unnecessary in such a small country. You've got the single most over-governed country on the face of the earth. You've got more members of parliament than any other country per head of population on the face of the earth. And your Prime Minister? The Prime Minister, dollar for dollar, earns more money than the President of the United States, the most wealthiest country on the face of the earth. Something's got to change, and I hope it does. I really do. I still love my country. There's a part of you that's still in my heart and soul. But unless there's some sort of radical change down there, I don't see anything changing for the better anytime soon. God bless you all. I wish you well. Cheers.